Welcome to the Voices Against Trafficking online conference. I'm Blanquita Cullum. We have a wonderful conference for you today. The other day I was talking to someone. They said, BQ, there just aren't any heroes anymore. I said, well, wait one moment. When you go to our conference, you're going to not only meet a lot of heroes, hear some very profound and beautiful things and inspirational things in the fight that they are conducting against human trafficking, but it might inspire you as well to become a hero. Let me start off by, first of all, welcoming our speakers and our members, our charter media members, the Epic Times, NTD, and so many organizations that are following us on Facebook and streaming us at voicesagainsttrafficking.com. But I want to welcome all of you because you're the people that we're trying to reach and to inspire to become part of this fight, this human rights fight. Let me introduce you, first of all, to our great president, our founder, Andi Buerger. Andi Buerger is so inspirational to me. We've known each other now for quite a few years. She is probably more aware about this journey than most people you'll ever meet because she's a survivor. She survived trafficking from the age of 6 months to 17 years old. She went on to get educated, got a JD in her law degree, but she didn't sit back on her merits. What she did is she decided that she was going to try to make a difference, not only to rescue and help these victims rejoin society, but to be able to inspire people like you to get in this group that we have now, Voices Against Trafficking, to fight this evil that is now perpetrating. I guess, what would you say, Andi? It's now in the millions, probably, of victims that we have more than ever.
Absolutely.
Andi Buerger, our fearless leader, welcome. I know you have a lot to share as we get started, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, BQ. That was awesome. And for those who don't know, or they wonder what the HON is in front of Blanquita's name, to her friends, BQ, she is the Honorable Blanquita Cullum because she was actually Senate confirmed as a governor of broadcasting. So she knows a few things about this. And we are very proud to have her as president and co-founder. So as BQ said, I am a survivor. I'm a survivor leader, and there are many of you out there that have also survived things. And here's why Voices Against Trafficking was created. One, not just because it was a personal passion of mine to try and save as many kids, as many victims as possible, but because collectively, as one united voice, we can do more good for those in terms of prevention and also in terms of helping those that have survived get the resources and things that they need. It's not just over once they're rescued, although that's huge, but they have to learn how to reintegrate into society, to stay off the streets and be unsheltered. And so, again, Voices Against Trafficking is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to such tools. And we are a network of networkers, which means like a hub of a wheel. We are in the middle, and everyone is a spoke, whether you're an individual, a mom, a dad, a grandma, a healthcare worker, a doctor, a legislator. And again, collectively, we are stronger together. The wheel goes further, and we can do a lot more good when we are united together. And so one of the things that we've done is we have a book out called Voices Against Trafficking, The Strength of Many Voices Speaking as One. This is a great handbook to have in your own home library, in your school library. Make sure that the leaders around you get a copy of this. There are voices from multiple countries here, small vignettes, if you will, 5 to 6 pages, easy to read, but 18 different authors from different aspects, whether it's media or other survivor leaders, or maybe someone trying to help educate on what you can do right now today. Because a lot of people, they're just not sure, well, what can I do? Because I don't have money, or I'm not an influencer, so to speak. But I tell you who you do influence. That's the child you have in your charge. Those are the kids around you at the park. You are an influencer in your community. And so our job is to help give you as many tools as possible One of the other tools we have is a magazine called Voices of Courage. And we celebrate the everyday heroes that are on the front line. Like BQ said, you can be that hero in your own neighborhood. And we celebrate those voices in this magazine that brings the truth about human rights issues, whether it's trafficking or homelessness or mental health issues. But we also provide hope. Like myself, all these decades later, I have a life that I am proud of because, I did make choices, but I couldn't have done that without a support system. So some of these everyday heroes may just be what you're looking for in terms of reading. Another thing that we're going to bring out that's very exciting to us is a CD fundraiser project. And what this does is it brings collective voices from the music industry. And these songs are going to be all over different genres. It's not out yet, but it will be very shortly. Broken treasures, because every human life should be valued. Every human life is a treasure in God's eyes. And also, we have brokenness too, whether it's a relationship, maybe it's a death in the family, maybe it is something that has happened to you, a criminal act. You could have been robbed. You could be a victim of trafficking, of abuse. Whatever that brokenness is, we want to bring hope because you still have value. No matter how shattered a life is, there is always value in that life. And that's what we want to encourage through this project. And the great news is we aren't the only ones using it. We are inviting any nonprofit that would also like to raise money for the things that they do on the front lines to join us in this project. We will provide you the CD. You can promote that through your front lines and through your distribution channels, and then also receive a percentage of the sales that you earn. So we want to make everyone available to this project and to the inspiration you're going to find. And BQ, we have a very special entry on that CD right here with us. He's a speaker today.
Oh my goodness, Kelly Wright, our
Kelly Wright.
wonderful new member, the great host and executive producer of America's Hope on NTD and Epic Times. Do I get to talk about him now?
Yes, you do.
I
I just wanted
love
to
Kelly Wright.
celebrate his voice on our CD project, and we're so thrilled that he wrote a special song for children on there.
He sure did. And Andi, he's got a very special background because not only has he worked with some of these very powerful networks like Fox and BNC when it was around. He did the World News Tonight. There he was the evening anchor. He's done so much, but he won 2 Emmy Awards. And I thought, I've got to figure out, here he's got a heart. I know he's a veteran. He was in the Army. He's been a journalist since 1977. But I thought, I'm going to investigate. Where did he get those 2 Emmys and for what? Well, he did a series on transatlantic slave. He has always had a heart for human rights, and he's always fought to preserve hope, especially for victims of human trafficking. Now, I've seen him do spectacular things with his new program on NTD, and it's also on the Epic Times television network. But Kelly, I tell you, every time I see you anchor, I get inspired because you take people who've been through such perilous journeys. Not all have been human rights victims, but many have. And you're able to be able to seize that part of their journey that's still the pain that still inspires hope. So I am honored to have you join us. And I can't wait to hear what you're going to say.
Thank you, BQ. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on this program. And my thanks to you as well as Andi for inviting me to be a part of Voices Against Human Trafficking. What you do is very important. We are really in a situation throughout our world where it's all hands on deck. You mentioned the Emmy Awards for the transatlantic slave trade story that I did. And we did that in Benin, West Africa. And there in 1999, we studied the slave route. We studied how diabolical the trade was. And I never imagined that here in 2023, we would be talking about something that is still a dastardly deed inflicted upon mankind, and that's human trafficking. As it goes, the United States is very painfully aware of it. The Department of Homeland Security, as many of the people on this program know, has declared it a national priority that we deal with human trafficking not just in terms of the sexploitation of our children and the child exploitation, but also in terms of labor and fraud and the produce and goods that are sold as a result of slave labor that's going on. The question that I have is, how did we come to this? Why did we participate in a benign neglect of what really was happening before our very eyes? In the United States, why did we allow the hospitality trade to flourish for so many years with sex trafficking? How did we come to this in our own homes throughout America, where we've lost our heart and soul in homes where abuse has gone on, and even parents transporting their children, which is another dastardly deed that's inflicted upon our own future? You know, I'm also a faith-based person, and it was Jesus Christ who said, whatever you do to the least of these, that you've done unto me. I think we need to be painfully aware of that stark warning about what we do to our children. The thing that I would have to say, though, in terms of the promise and hope that Andi talks about, and that's why I love this group so much, is because not only have they survived, but they are overcomers. See, it's one thing to say that you're a survivor, but to show that you've overcome the situation means that you are more than a conqueror. And Andi, I have to applaud you for being one of the heroes and sheroes that's involved on a daily basis, helping our men, women, and children who are caught up in human trafficking as the victims. And yet, you who had been a victim yourself, you're no longer serving as a victim, you're a victor. And that's what we have to do. We have to take the victimhood and become the victors of people who have been compromised and marginalized and oppressed and reduced to being less than human because of human trafficking. So I would say this to everyone who's watching and everyone participating: let us make it a clarion call that we must become repairers of the breach. We have to reach out and help those who are oppressed and marginalized. We have to become the warriors. We have to become the modern day abolitionists who are raising our voices loud and clearly and challenging all members of government and leaders throughout every nation to stop this insidious evil that is ravaging our homes and our families and really stunting the progress of what we can share globally. As Dr. King said, we have to come to the table of brotherhood. And the table of brotherhood means that every one of us has an opportunity to stand up and say, this will not stand. We will draw a line in the sand, and that is to save the souls of men and women who show promise and hope, and yet we steal that promise and hope for selfish gain. And ill-gotten gain never produces anything except war, famine, poverty. So let's take it upon ourselves. And I do this as a journalist, and I do this as a man, as a father, as a grandfather. I want to tell the world that we must be abolitionists to stand up against human trafficking in any form. And the goods that are sold as a result of human trafficking, we need to stop buying those goods, boycott them. In addition to that, we need to speak to members of the United States Congress to say, look, the Department of Homeland Security has declared this as a national priority. And to the news media that operates in this country and other countries like the UK, state to them, if this is a national priority, why aren't we making it a national issue on our programs? And then finally, I would just say this. As I stated, we must become repairers of the breach. We must set the captives free and set the prisoners free and set the oppressed free. And then finally, I would add this. We must show the world that there's hope over despair, there's faith over fear, there's love over hate. Let's arm ourselves with the good knowledge that we have among us and how we've been involved on the front lines of this campaign, and stop slavery in its tracks. Because what we're really going to find out as a result of the people who have gone through the slaveries, like the slave trade in terms of what happened to Andi and what happened to other people, is that they are emerging as the modern day Josephs. And what did Joseph do after slavery? He rebuilt the land and saved us from a famine. I'll leave it at that and say we must be the abolitionists to help the modern day Josephs. save us from our own destruction.
You know, Kelly, you are making such profound statements, and in effect, what you're really saying to everyone, to wake them up, that this is 21st century slavery. You know, we were taking a time machine and going backwards. We'd say, oh, well, you know, we'd go back, we'd be the people that would be with the Underground Railroad. We'd be making the difference. But what you're trying to do is make them understand you don't need to take a time machine backwards. Slavery is worse now than it was then, and it was hideous.
Absolutely.
And what happens, and again, you're always so profound, because it made me think that slavery doesn't look at your gender, your choices, your race, your religion, your age, your circumstance. What it looks at is your commodity. How can we take this commodity, violate it, use it, and abuse it? So to your great words, I hope everyone will be inspired to move on it and become a part of the fight, to become part of the 21st century fight against this human violation. God bless you, my friend. I'm so proud that everybody must watch America's Hope on NTD and Epoch Times. If you go even online, you'll see the great Kelly Wright, who I have to tell everyone about your voice again, because this guy is such a phenomenal singer that I have recruited him to sing at the National Memorial Day parade this year in Washington, D.C. So you don't want to miss any single second that you can to hear him and on our CD. God bless you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And coming up, how many of you remember growing up, your parents would say, well, you can't talk to strangers. Don't speak to anybody that you don't know. Try to be smart and pay attention. Well, now our young people are put in situations that are much more devastating. We're talking about situational awareness. And what to not only, because sometimes you may have the schools that are not as aware, sometimes the government's not as aware. A lot of times the burden is upon the parents and frankly, the kids themselves, because these are weird times with the presence of predators, online trafficking, you name it. Another great guy joining us, the commander, is going to join us. And I love Brian Searcy because he's also, I passed his monument, the United States Air Force, this morning here in DC, and I thought, I can't wait to talk to Brian with the Paratus Group. And what he's been doing to try to help people is amazing. And Brian, you just got to get on here and tell everyone what they need to know about the true benefits of really learning about situational awareness.
Well, thanks, BQ. And it's kind of hard to follow Kelly. And I love everything that he had to say. And I love the fact that he closed it by saying that we need to arm up. We need to, as parents, as members of our communities, become prepared so that we can truly work to prevent this human trafficking that has gone from a $500 million cartel booming business 10 years ago to over $13 billion in 2021 and 2022. And I hate to even think about what that number is going to be in 2023. You know, the movie that Tim Ballard had, Underground Railroad, came out, and it brought some awareness to parents and families of how bad this actually is. But it really doesn't do anything to focus on the prevention piece. Most nonprofits and organizations that are out there are trying to catch the bad guys. They're trying to rescue the kids, and then just like one of the key things that Voices Against Trafficking does, then we also try to get help to those kids that we rescue. But we have to look at a holistic approach if we truly want to make a dent and go about how, stopping human trafficking here in the United States, but also around the world. And that prevention starts in the home. It starts with parents. You talked about how people really aren't aware today, and I think you kind of understated it. Less than 1 in 15 people today know what situational awareness is, much less have an active way and an understanding of what to do if they potentially see that their kids are potentially being groomed online, or their kids' behavior is changing, or they see somebody with a man in a grocery store, or at the airport, or at a coffee shop that has the indicators of being human trafficked. We have Human Trafficking Awareness Month. We've got a number of things that our federal government has done to try and get awareness out there. But that falls flat on its face because people are not empowered to do anything about it. And that is one of the key things that we've done by putting together our Be Aware, Stay Safe program, which focuses around the 3 Ps. And what are the 3 Ps? I'm glad you asked, BQ. Those 3 Ps are prepare. First, you need to be prepared. As an aviator and somebody who spent 23 years in the Air Force and now has over 37 years of leadership training, flying airplanes, and a lot of other things that go along with that, I know for a fact that you don't rise to an occasion, you fall to your level of preparation, you fall to your level of training. So if people are not aware of what's going on, if they have the blinders on, if they think it's not going to happen to me, they think they live in a safe community, so they need to be aware if they aren't paying attention, if they don't have great situational awareness, but then more importantly, if they haven't thought about what actions that they can take to actually make a difference. And that's the big part that Kelly got into, the arming up that I want to focus on is it's not just being prepared. You've got to learn how to take action to make a difference. And that then goes into the second part of the 3 Ps, and that's prevent. The key thing that we need to do if we really want to attack and stop and prevent human trafficking is to go the prevention route. We need to make sure that kids no longer become victims, and that starts with our parents. It starts with educating the kids that are in middle school and high school. It starts educating our communities, who the people are that are out there paying for this. I talk to parents all the time, and they have no idea that the people 5 miles away from where they live, who are police chiefs, people in government, CEOs of companies, they're the ones that are out there with the demand for this. So we have to educate about that. So it takes a concerted effort to do the prevention. But to do that prevention, you need to put the time in, you need to learn and develop the habits and behaviors so that you can prevent it from happening. And that's what our program, our Be Aware, Stay Safe program is all about.
Brian, as you were talking about this, I was thinking how important it is that we become aware, but our children, as you say, become aware. And I think it's important that we not forget that our kids need to know. In the old days, we'd say, tell them about not to talk to strangers, inappropriate touches, but they need to be able to feel confident to be able to come home and talk freely and not be, openly with the parents where they will accept what they have to say. Because you never know. The question is, in the situational awareness, who do you trust? Do you trust the teacher? Do you trust the neighbor? Do you trust the priest or the pastor? Do you trust the kids walking home with you? I grew up with a mother that was very strict, and she'd say to me, if I wanted to go spend the night at somebody's house, she'd say, well, do they have older brothers? What does the father do? What's the mother like? We had a rule that no matter how late it was, even if it was 3 a.m, if we didn't feel comfortable, we could call them and go home. And the other thing Andi and I've talked about is that creating a code word for children to be able to use, that the parents and the family members will know they're in trouble. I don't know about your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. But what that takes is the parents knowing what the threat is, and then having the ability through the development of the situation awareness that we have in our program to be able to see the indicators and to spend time with their kids and to develop that trust with their kids. Part of the content that we have in our program is every Tuesday and Thursday, an email goes out that talks about whether it might be the 10 critical skills that we talk about in our program, or the process that we've developed on our program, or the threats that are out there. And yesterday's content talked about how parents need to establish that trust with their kids. And the way that they establish that trust with their kids is not by lecturing them, not by punishing them, but by paying attention to what the kids are doing, and to understand that it's the parents' action that is more important than any word that they ever say. Now, their words have to match their actions, but they have to put the time in and communicate with their kids, sit down with their kids. That's how you establish that trust. That's how you ensure that if the kids are online and somebody is trying to groom them or get to them on one of the apps that they have on their phone or on their gaming system, that they are aware of it, but then they do feel comfortable to go talk to their parents. And then the other thing that we really have to educate parents on, which, some people don't want to hear this, but parents should not strive to be their kids' friends. Parents need to be parents. Parents need to establish discipline, not punishment, but discipline. And the way that you do that is by spending time with your kids, paying attention to your kids, demonstrating to your kids the type of actions that they should be doing. So parents, how do they interact with each other? How do they interact with their friends? How do they interact with their kids? And if there's more than one child in the home, do they interact the same with all of the kids? Our kids are watching, and they watch for a long time. So that's why that is such an important part for parents to be able to ensure that they establish that trust with their kids. But one of the things we know for a fact is that most adults today, and this now it goes all the way down to high school, college students, high school students, and all the way down to 5 and 6 year olds, because of the devices and what's going on in our society today, people today don't have these skills. I would get very frustrated because people would complain, people my age would complain about how millennials and Generation Z were lazy or couldn't do this or couldn't do that. And one of the things that I really found out is it's not because they don't want to, or don't have the skills. It's we haven't given them the skills. So that's a big part of what our program is all about, is empower the learning and development of the habits and behaviors that go along with situational awareness. What are the 10?
I would ask you about this too, Brian, because, and maybe you can speak to, about this a bit. People have said to me, we don't know who our kids are communicating with online. We don't know who is trying to approach them online. They may say they're the same age. They may say they could end up being some old guy trying to hit up on a young woman, trying to get them to do things on a format, maybe like a TikTok, taking challenges, meeting up where you don't know that they're going. I mean, you said something also that was important, to not have to be their friend, to be their parent. And that level of respect is critical and could save their lives.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that you just talked about is these kids on these devices. Most of the groomers out there are not their own age, but they are professionals. They are experts at looking for the needs that the young boys and girls have, and then exploiting that. And let me tell a quick story that kind of talks to your piece then about the parents. So, invariably, when I speak in front of parents, I'll talk to parents and I'll ask them, raise your hand. How many of you check your kids' phones, the texts that they're getting, the apps that they're looking at? You look at the computer to see their search history and those types of things, to see what their kids are looking at. And most parents come back today and they say, well, we don't check that because we trust our kids. So what I do is I ask the parents to indulge me and go home and check the phone, check the text, check the apps, check the device, check the browser history. And I had a bank president who called me a few days after I did the program for all of the employees in his bank. And he said, Brian, thank you for putting this into my heart that I needed to do that. They checked on a Friday their young son's phone and found out that their son was being bullied by 5 kids at school on their phone via text. And anybody that follows the suicide rates for young adults in our country today know that anywhere between the suicide at that age range is 11 to 15 times more likely to happen if somebody is being bullied. So these parents were empowered now because they found out. That's the first thing. But then they were able to work with their son, get their son the help that they needed in the home, but then also go to the school, talk to the school. They were now empowered to do different things because they had that information to be able to do that. I've been paying attention to tonight's debate, and it's at the Reagan Library. They've been talking about Ronald Reagan. One of the things that he always said was that you need to trust but verify, and that's what parenting needs to be all about. It's not about being their friend. It's about being the parent, establishing discipline, establishing respect, and then making it trust but verify.
I think that's brilliant, and also reminding the people that we listen to in these debates that they have an accountability more than just good words. They need to show up and show us how much respect and what the fight they will take on behalf of us on fighting for human trafficking and against human trafficking and for our children. Thank you, Brian Susie. And I want everyone to go to the Paratus Group. And do you want to give your website real quickly before I move on? Because right now somebody could be checking this out and want to have more information of how they can start investigating the situational awareness issue.
Yeah, so we actually have 2 websites, paratus.group, Paratus.group, and that is becoming our informational site where we have a lot of information. But our Be Aware, Stay Safe program with the 3 Ps is coming out on briansearcy.com. That is where you can go and download the 10 critical skills. You can get a free copy of our book, and then you can figure out and go through the links to figure out how you can enroll in our Be Aware, Stay Safe community program, so you can ensure that your family learns and develops the habits and behaviors and the mindset of situational awareness, so you can keep your kids from becoming victims. And then we all work together to keep our community safe.
Thank you so much. And one of the things that Brian was talking about in this whole issue of parents talking to the kids is trying to help your kids be able to become self-confident. They're all going to face some measure of questions as they, start to mature, and questions about how they look, how accomplished they are, how many friends they have, if they're popular or not. I'm sure that many of you remember what it was like growing up at that time, but trying to help your kids develop a measure of self-confidence and really knowing the trust they have with the strength of the family supporting them regardless of any difficulties is critical. One of the things that is being discussed a lot right now in these debates and in political circles are parents' rights. Do parents really have rights? We've seen now that people that go and speak out at parent-teachers meetings, in many cases, if they seem to be politically incorrect, are labeled as terrorists. They've had the FBI come to the home. They've had people basically try to abuse their ability to maintain their vision of a family life, and saying, you know what, when those kids cross the threshold at the schoolyard, you don't have those kids anymore. We get those kids. Well, this particular next couple of guests, these two folks are going to tell you about a real nightmare that they've suffered. Beautiful family of 7 kids, and Mark and Terry Stamen, the founders of Let Our Children Go, are going to give you kind of a first-hand example of what happened to them, how it happened, when it happened, and why, and what they're doing. So Mark and Terry Stamen, welcome to our conference online with Voices Against Trafficking.
Thank you so much for having us, and thank you to Andi for listening to us and hearing our story and what we're doing to try to fix this problem that is plaguing our country. So we have an organization called Let Our Children Go, and the way that the area that we're addressing ties into what people have been talking to today about protecting your children and stopping the child trafficking, is that our organization is about highlighting what is happening to families that are having their children unlawfully and inhumanely separated from them by the child welfare system in our country. And so what we found out when this happened to us over 7 years, it's been about 7 years now, it happened to ourselves out of Kentucky in the city of Louisville in Jefferson County. We have 7 children. My husband's a retired Air Force veteran. We were homeschooling all of our children, and we had the state step in and take all of our children from us. And so over the course of these many years, what we found out is that the foster care system is actually a pipeline for human trafficking. And so we've started an organization called Let Our Children Go, and we are trying to help other families that have been affected by this system, to help raise awareness and to help put a stop to the way that the government agency has been allowed to intrude into families and rip children away from loving homes, and then they possibly get placed into the foster care system that opens them up to the trafficking. And then once the government has that type of control over your children, the things that Brian is talking about, you really don't have that much control over anymore. And then your child is open up to those dangers of being with strangers who don't care and love them the way that their parents and their family would. So that's a little bit of an overview of how we got involved with this and what we are doing to try to combat the problem with trafficking and the slavery that's going on with children and families and what is happening to parents not being able to protect their children because they're having this government intrusion going on.
So,
Yeah, so
give us a little of your perspective here, Mark.
yeah, thank you, BQ, for hosting us. It's great to be with you and the panel and everyone in the audience. Just want to kind of set the stage in a little broader perspective. What we have happening is a seditious operation unfolding throughout our country in all 50 states under a disguise as a fraudulent operation in respect to the welfare of children and our families. And the fraudulent aspect of it is that, you know, when you hear the words abuse and neglect of a child, that really kind of lights the fire as far as concern among many of our fellow Americans. But what's really happening is that despite that it's a criminal matter in just about every state in our union, many parents are being proceeded against in a non-criminal manner, meaning that there's an allegation made against them. Could be something in respect to taking your child to a medical practitioner and you don't want to have a procedure done. You don't want to have a certain vaccination, put into them, or any kind of other thing. And then it could also even rise to the level of where you could have someone who just doesn't like your worldview, doesn't like your religious faith. It could be a teacher who has a certain agenda that they will just make an allegation against the family, and then the child welfare agency representatives will show up and they will say, we need to remove a child in the name of safety and best interest. And then what happens is parents are subjected to a long-running nightmare just on an allegation with no criminal charge. And this is all incentivized by large amounts of our Title IV Social Security money. And so we became aware of this because it happened to us 7 years ago, where we had an allegation made against us after we took our 17-year-old daughter in for an eye test, and it evolved into other matters that we were not there for. And because we would not go back for the additional areas that they wanted to have an evaluation on, they proceeded against us, and they basically kidnapped our children under the color of law. And what we discovered through the course of our investigation was a child trafficking ring operating within Louisville, Kentucky. And we identified over 50 felonies and twice as many misdemeanors, reported them to every law enforcement agency, went to U.S. attorneys in another state who reviewed our evidence, were convinced enough to send it back to Kentucky. And yet we have been to the highest levels of the Department of Justice with no remedy and no justice. And our children have been severely hurt. And we are just one story among thousands of other parents that are going through this. And so we have more to our story out on the internet. People can do a search. We actually have a show right now that we're doing on rumble.com. If you do a search for Let Our Children Go on rumble.com, you will see many of the other families that we're highlighting, and we're going to continue doing this show because we're not just out here for ourselves. There are many other parents who are being hurt in a variety of ways, and we encourage people to take those in, and then you can find out more about our story because we're limited here on time. And then we just ask people to please step up and join with us as you find out more about what's really going on. We have a big tent organization, the Heritage and Freedom Coalition, which people can find at h3fc.com, in addition to the Let Our Children Go mission. And so the focus of our mission is to build local action networks within our respective communities so that we can together support each other and then share stories and find out what's really going on in respect to the child trafficking operation unfolding in our country, and then work together with We the People Power to show up at our representatives' offices and demand the corrective actions. Right now, they're not listening to individual families. And so it's a really big threat, and many children and parents are being harmed.
Wow, well, that's very powerful. You know, I can remember when I lived years and years ago in San Antonio, Texas, there was an attorney, and he had a billboard, and he said, winning's not everything. It's learning and knowing how to fight. And that's what you're trying to do, is to try to help people learn and know how to fight back, because many parents don't have the funds. They may not be able to have the access to the media and may not be connected really to a lot of the community leaders. And your organization is trying to empower them to learn how to fight and protect their children. Very, very important. And I thank you so much, Mark, and Terry, thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of this, because again, as we say, and I go back to what Kelly was talking about, this human trafficking being 21st century slavery. If you really have a conscience about the value of these children and their future, you need to get into the fight, and you need to get into the fight now. So keep us posted with what's going on. We want to continue. And I see you've got letourchildrengo.org behind you, and the other Let Our Children Go at protomail.com. Thank you so much. Andi Buerger, I'm going to bring you back on, my friend. And we're going to continue this discussion because Andi's got a lot to share with what's happening to Voices Against Trafficking. We now have a new magazine that'll be coming out on the stands, and Kelly will recognize one of the woman who's going to be on the cover, which is a very good friend of ours named Crystal Cheng. Crystal, you talk about bravery and what she suffered in human torture from the Chinese Communist Party is just incredible. But Andi, I want you to talk about who's going to be in the magazine. We've got a new CD with Kelly's voice and lots happening. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, my friend.
All right. Thank you, BQ. Wow. What a great program. I mean, we just keep learning more and more, don't we, BQ, about all the different aspects of how, children in particular, they're defenseless, they're vulnerable. And when they're hurt, and whether it's a separation from a family or physically or in any other way, we are actually hurting any chance of future for them and for the country. Kids are the future of our nation, of all nations. So thank you to all the speakers for sure. But yes, so in terms of Voices Against Trafficking, mentioned the book that we're going to have a second edition coming out first of the year, possibly sooner. Our CD project, we're just so excited about that because this is just not your everyday music. We have a Grammy Award-winning producer who's producing the record or the CD. You can tell I'm a dinosaur. I say albums and records, but it's a CD.
They're coming back, Andi. They're coming back.
I know. We'll just keep going, right? So we're going to have CD physically and also digitally for people that don't have CD players anymore. But it's going to be fantastic. There's going to be about 2 CDs worth of music on there and bonus tracks. There are musicians that have played in a lot of well-known groups that almost everyone out there would know, all different genres. So we're very excited that they all came together and donated their song or their licensing fee to us because they believe that music is not only universal, but another way to help people learn more about the topic and to help support us. I mean, guess what? We have lights and internet bills too. And so Voices Against Trafficking appreciates all the partnerships, and we should hopefully release Broken Treasures, the CD set, in the next 3 to 4 weeks, if not sooner. So we're looking forward to that. We also have a couple of the artists who found out about us, and they are now making us their charity of choice and promoting us at concerts internationally. So thanks to everyone out there. That Voices Against Trafficking is expanding, it's growing, we're getting our roots down. And then we just had someone else today, BQ, that put our book up on their international site, Catalyst 360, I believe. Did I get that right?
It's Biz Catalyst 360.
That's right. Thank you. It's a good thing she's the other part of the team. Biz Catalyst 360. So check them out as well. And of course, Chris Meek, Next Steps Forward, he has all of our stuff on his website, and he is also going to put the CD. So again, there are things you can do. If you're someone that says, I don't have a lot of money or a lot of time, add your voice to our roster. Go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com, add your voice. Say, I want to be part of this. We need to have you email that to us because, we don't want people to think we're making up names when we tell them we have X number of people. And there is more power in the presence of more people. So collectively, that is why Voices was created. It was a God nudge in the middle of the night, and I heard him say, go get more voices. So we want you to be one of those voices that is fighting with us. And then we'll also have some, eventually we're going to have our TV program next year, Voices of Courage, coming out. We're going to be interviewing people and having discussions on all kinds of human rights issues because every human being should have their rights protected. They are valuable, yes. They are treasures, and that's what we fight for, whether it's trafficking.
Andi, I want to remind you too, because you've got so much going on, and one of the things people don't know how great Andi is, because Andi really when she kind of got first started, she saw young people that she saw were troubled, and they were on the street. And she told her husband, "We got to stop. We got to help them." And the funny thing is, because she's been a victim, some of these kids were so abused and so messed up. You can imagine every single victim has PTSD.
Yeah.
They go back to the first time they were brutalized, but somehow victim to victim, they have opened up to her. And that's kind of, you started with Beulah's Place first.
Yes. Yes.
But what I was going to mention to you is that on our Voices Against Trafficking site, there'll be phone numbers and other places, other information, so that if you think someone needs help or if you need to call a phone number, we'll have that there for you on the voicesagainsttrafficking.com.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, BQ. And also, you'll find not only the Voices Against Trafficking book, but if you go to Amazon.com, you can get it there. And also the first book, which my writer friend and I wrote together, a little bit about my story, A Fragile Thread of Hope. One survivor's quest to rescue, because we are all on this quest to not only rescue, but as Brian said, we have to prevent it. Prevention is the best way to bring an end to human trafficking and sexual exploitation. But we need more of you, and these books are one way to do it. Going online to Voices Against Trafficking, as BQ just said, helplines, hotlines, from suicide hotline, child abuse hotline. You know, what if I don't know if something's happening? Well, please call, because I would have done anything if I had known somebody was looking for me. It would have saved me 17 years of being tremendously abused and tortured and hurt. So please don't be shy. Call one of those safe hotlines and say, I think something is happening, because that is how we will be able to help you help that potential victim not become a victim. So please use the hotlines. Back to you, BQ.
Well, the other thing about that too, Andi, which we're very blessed, is that we have people that speak Spanish and other languages, so that if you think they need to have someone help them and communicate with them in another language, we can try to help you with that. You know, the organization is getting worldwide. In fact, it's international, thanks to Andi and all of her hard work. The bottom line is, right now, we're trying to make people understand that there's a lot of options, but really, right now, if we're going to make a difference, this is kind of a really good time, because we are in an election cycle. And we can get these people committed to trying to make a difference, to stop this human trafficking, whether it's happening to these innocent victims that at the border that are being used by the cartels, the horror stories that we have from our wonderful members that work on the border in Tijuana and in Mexico. They tell us about these young kids being like collateral, and they're used 25, 30 times a day, and they're little kids. Our friend Alma Tucker, who has a safe house for little boys and girls in Tijuana, and other friends of ours in Mexico, share the horror stories, but we can make a difference. And it's kind of frightening for people when they're close at hand, because they're worried about the retaliation of the cartels. But the fact of the matter is, if we're going to make a difference, we've got the United States government. They work for us.
Absolutely.
They work for us. They forget sometimes they work for us. But Andi, you know, you've had great success in talking to a lot of them. You've had members of Congress, senators, local mayors that have been very supportive of what your work has been doing, even in Oregon.
Absolutely. And we are actually going to have Brian Searcy come out to Oregon very shortly on October 13th. But before we get to that, to your point, absolutely. If you are voting, if you are watching any election, whether it's local or national, make sure that the person that you're interested in can show that they have actually done something to help your community be a safer place, a more aware place for children, because it happens in every neighborhood. Every 40 seconds in America, a child 18 years and under is abducted. That means they're taken or they're lured into something that looks safe. So we're not trying to police them, we're trying to protect them. But yes, and follow us on, I know BQ's going to get to that, but follow us. But let's go ahead. For those of you in Central Oregon, here's a special treat. There's going to be a quick little video about Mr. Brian Searcy, Colonel Brian Searcy, coming to Oregon to do just what he talked about today, to help us be one of those pods of communities that says, not here. We're going to be aware and we're going to stay safe. Okay.
Brian Searcy here with the Be Aware, Stay Safe program. I wanted to take a couple minutes to introduce you to this program because this program is different than any other program that you've done because it takes an investment. Unlike traditional type training that will give you an hour or so of information and now you're supposed to be able to take that information and actually use it, our program is designed through the use of micro e-learning and empowering the 2190 rule to help you to develop your own habits, behaviors, and a mindset by practicing a process so that you can follow through with what we term the 3 Ps, the prepare yourself so that you can prevent the threats that we face in our communities from happening to make yourself, your family, and your community more safe, but then also empower you and those around you to be able to protect yourself, to protect your family, and to protect your community if you can't prevent the bad things from happening. Now, as I mentioned, our program is different. It empowers, like I said, the 2190 rule, which is all about the development of habits, behaviors, and a mindset. And the way that you do that is by practicing a process over and over and over again. So it's something that you do on a regular basis. So it's not something that you, like I said, get in traditional training and a week later you forget it all. The only true way to make a difference is through the establishment of these habits and behaviors. Now, one of the key things that you do when you develop these habits and behaviors is you empower yourself with situational awareness. What does situational awareness do? That is what empowers you to prevent bad things from happening, the threats that we face around there. Now, there's 2 other things, though, that situational awareness also provides you with. When you have and practice situational awareness, you can identify changes in people's behavior. So that is one of the key ways that you're empowered to keep people potentially from becoming human trafficked. If they're starting to see if you're starting to see those indicators, you not only see those indicators, but you know what action to take to do it. Or if someone potentially is thinking about committing suicide, you identify those indicators, but instead of ignoring it or not knowing what to do, you've thought through what to do and you actually take action. So situational awareness helps with safety. Situational awareness helps because you can identify those indicators of behavior and then actually doing something. And then third, when you have and practice situational awareness, it makes you a better leader. It makes you a better parent because you're empowered to look for those learning opportunities, not just when the bad things might be happening to identify them and then know what to do about it, know who to talk to, what actions to take. But as a parent or a leader, it's important for us to look for and identify those learning opportunities to establish the types of behaviors we want people to have. So at the Be Aware, Stay Safe program, it takes an investment. It takes an investment for you to put the time in to develop the habits, the behaviors, and the mindset, and to practice this process that we're going to introduce to you. But I promise you that once you do that, you will know what normal looks like. You'll be able to trust it when you get a hair on the back of the neck or that gut feeling. You will have thought through from your own personal standpoint what you're capable of doing when you see something or you get that hair on the back of the neck or that gut feeling that something isn't right. You've thought about the actions to take, and then you're empowered to actually take action to either prevent yourself or your family or someone in your community from being a victim, or if you actually have to take action to protect yourself or a family member or someone in your community, because you're now prepared, you're able to do that. So we're excited to have you enrolled in this program. Put the time in, learn and develop your own personal habits and behaviors, your own mindset, practice this process, and I guarantee you that you will become prepared so that you can prevent bad things from happening, but also be prepared to take action and protect yourself or your family if you have to. Thanks, and I look forward to your feedback.
Well, I want to give a couple extra seconds here, and I want to go to my favorite television star, Kelly Wright, and see if he doesn't want to give us a couple of last words, and we'll get a couple of last words from Mark and Terry before I wrap it up. But your thoughts on this, Kelly?
Overall thoughts are, it goes back to what Brian was just saying, take action. Mark and Terry have been taking action. Blanquita, you've been taking action. Andi is taking action. I'm taking action with whatever I can do in terms of the media. We all have a role to play in saving people from human trafficking. Take action. See something, say something, and do something.
I love it so much. And Mark and Terry, you want to give us a couple of profound words as well before we wrap up, my friends?
Well, we would just like anybody that's interested in joining with us to reach out to us from the information that we gave before. And you can find us on social sites. Just look for Let Our Children Go. And look for the daisy flower. We have a daisy flower because one of our children is named Daisy, and we have 7 petals for our 7 children. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for hosting us. And, this is a real threat. Before all the American people, no child or family is safe right now in the United States. So please visit our show at rumble.com, Let Our Children Go. And please get involved, as Kelly said. Do something.
Well, we love that. You are inspiring us as well. And for those of you that want to join our organization, or you want to just follow us, you can go to Voices Against Trafficking on Facebook. On LinkedIn, it's Voices Against Trafficking. YouTube, the same. We hope that you'll watch the stream. And on, I guess it's Twitter still, but I think, or is it X? I get a little confused with that, you guys. But it's at Voices Against T1. And please, don't hesitate to order the first edition of our great Voices of Courage magazine. And you can do that by going to voicesofcourage.media. And in fact, it's a steal right now because it's $19.95. It's going to have to go up a tiny bit for the next one. But we really encourage you to be a part of this. And this only costs, what is it, $50 to join a lifetime membership with Voices Against Trafficking. A lifetime of membership to commit to save a life, to become empowered, to learn what to look for, how to fight in this horrible, horrible battle of seizing our children's future. Let's take it back. How dare they think they can hurt the innocence of these children? We need to stand up. And all you need to do is go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com to find us. You'll see the beautiful picture of our wonderful president and founder, Andi Buerger. And if she can come back and be resolved to try to save lives after being a victim, we encourage all of you to. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts to all of you out there that have a conscience, that have a heart for humanity. If you believe in human rights, join us at voicesagainsttrafficking.com. I'm Blankita Cullum.
Are we good?
See you.